Hello and welcome. I'm your host, author Ryan M. Oliver, and this is the Mighty Books Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Books Podcast. Today with me, a special guest, and actually repeat guest, Mr. Dan Weedin, who is not only an author, longtime family friend, actually, but he's also running for mayor of Poulsbo, Washington. So, Dan, welcome back to the show.
Ryan, it's my pleasure to be here. I don't know how many repeat guests you've had, but I'm happy to be one of those.
I only had a handful, so this is as we're getting on to past the 100
Good.
episode phase. I'm starting to get some people back, which is super cool. It's like
Yes.
connecting with more friends, which is just
Yes,
awesome.
absolutely. Well, thank you for inviting me on. I'm happy to discuss books and mayor stuff and all of that.
Heck yeah. So let's start with it because this is kind of a rehashing of some book stuff that you were doing, working on, and it's also just the announcement of running for mayor. That's really exciting. So let's start with just the background. What is your background from business to being an author to what experience you might benefit you as a mayor of Paulsville? What inspired you to go into be a candidate? Shoot.
Yeah,
There's a lot to unpack.
It's a long and winding road, I guess, for those of my generation who remember the Beatles. I have this marks 20 years that I started my own consulting firm, Ryan. It was 2005. So for 20 years, I've been an entrepreneur, I've been a consultant, I've been a speaker, I've written 4 books just on my own. I've also contributed to others. And every one of those books have dealt with some level of a management skill or an entrepreneur skill. And I think there's some difference in both of those, but we're talking about things like leadership. In fact, one of my books was called Unleashed Leadership. We're talking about communication skills. We're talking about engagement with people and building relationships. And really, if you look at the last book that we talked about, Back Nine Walking, it is about resilience, personal and business resilience. That's been, if I look back over 35 years, actually even a little bit more of being in business in some way, the majority of my life has centered around, or the majority of my work is centered around creating relationships. I've been in sales. I've had, I've sold insurance. I still sell insurance. I've been in sales and selling my consulting practice. I've always had to actually be in a position to, at some level, sell myself to people to trust me. And you have to build relationships. You have to build deep relationships. You have to build trusting relationships. I've had to do that. I've always loved being in a leadership role. For whatever reason, that goes back to my days in high school and junior high. I've had that. And so really, this seemed like a culmination of all of that because of some changes that have recently occurred within the governance of the city of Poulsbo, of which I've called home specifically since 2002, although I lived in North Kitsap since 1993. So some of the changes that came up really got me to thinking and saying, at this stage of my life, I think this would be fun. And so that really, and I know we're going to talk more about it, but that really was the impetus to throwing my hat in the ring.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, you have a lot of experience in just entrepreneurship in general. And I know from just understanding politics to a little bit. I've never done anything political in my life, but from what I hear from people who go into the public service, this is a service to the public, which you have been providing in some way, shape, or form as an entrepreneur for a long time. So this just seems like it's a natural progression. What challenges do you think you're going to kind of have to deal with if you do obtain the mayoralship?
Well, it's interesting. it is a political position. There's
Mhm.
no doubt about it. But what the city of Poulsbo did, and I think their wisdom was fantastic, is they took it out of a situation where it was where we've had a strong mayor, and Becky Erickson has been a fantastic mayor for 16 years, and the mayors before her as well. But they've taken it out of a strong mayor position and hired a city administrator. And the city administrator is going to do the day-to-day work of the city. And the mayor is going to be in much more of a leadership, vision, and community engagement role. That's how I see it, or
Mhm.
how it's done. And what I've actually heard back from council members is that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to really take away any kind of, this is a political ambitious type thing, and say we want people who want to serve Poulsbo because they love Poulsbo.
Yeah.
It's not a stepping stone. It's not, it's not a move to kind of rise up and go to other types of political roles. And so that is probably, to the first part of your question was well, I do know it's political. I'm not naive. I've
Of
been in those
course.
positions before. I see this as a service opportunity. I
Hmm.
really see this as a service opportunity because the mayor it doesn't casting votes. There's 7 council members who are casting votes. The mayor sets the vision.
Yeah.
So that was what was appealing to me from that standpoint. I think really the challenges we face, and it's a small city. Everybody knows you. I can walk into into the market, town and country market, or into Red Apple, or into name any of the great restaurants we have in Poulsbo. I
Yeah.
can walk in there and somebody's going to recognize me, and if you're mayor, they usually recognize that you're mayor as well.
Yeah.
And I think the challenges of that are people are going to either be happy or not happy, with things that have happened in the city, whether it's your decision or not. And I think the challenges are of really being open to listening to people's concerns
Hmm.
as a consultant. That's what I've had to try to do is to avoid the snap judgment of here's what you need to do,
Hmm.
and be someone who asks questions well and learns. I think some of the bigger things is just the perception is reality,
Yeah.
and how a city is run has a lot of perception to it.
Yeah. I think you, again, as you as a customer, essentially it's customer service almost. With you as an entrepreneur, you're your own boss. And really, the customers, the people who are you help serve getting insurance to and are consulting, they're your customers. Well, the residents of Paulsville will be in essence your customers. You have to take in that information and process it. And then if you have to give them good or bad news, you have to give them a reason behind said things. So I feel like your experience as an entrepreneur, doing a lot of things on your own, learning as you go, making those good connections and networking is really going to benefit you as someone in that kind of a leadership role.
Well, thank you. And that brings up a point. This is now, and this is how it was actually framed. So I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. It's a part-time mayor position. It allows me or anybody else like me to not have to make an either or decision about becoming
Great.
mayor. I'm still going to be running my consulting practice. I'm
Oh,
still
wonderful.
going to be writing books, so we'll talk about the next book at some point.
Oh, heck
I'm
yeah.
still going to be writing books. I'm still going to be coaching golf at some level. Maybe it's not exactly the same, but I'm still going to be doing all of those things. I have to learn how to be a really good time manager, and that's all part of it,
Yeah.
But the reality is I'm paying the same city taxes. I'm not maybe not paying as much, but I'm still having to pay the city taxes. I'm still having
Sure.
to live under a lot of the things that many of the business owners inside the city. So I'm one of them. And you don't always see that in a mayor position where I can truthfully say, hey, I'm just like you. I'm running a business in Poulsbo.
Yeah, you have skin in the game. What the
Yep.
decisions are made will affect you in some manner speaking, whether it's your home residence or it's your business or it's your commute, or you get the picture. Really, any
Yep.
part of your life can be affected by the decisions that can be made as mayor. So, I mean, it to me that makes a lot of sense to go in someone who cares about the community, who wants to see it succeed or continue to succeed. Because it sounds like you're taking up a pretty good like succession. That was a nice transfer, or it's being left in the good hands, and now that person's leaving, and you're coming in, hopefully coming in yeah, continue. I don't want to make any assumptions. Come into and continue the path forward to maintain a healthy community.
Yeah, and I really believe honestly, Ryan. I mean, you've lived in Kitsap County your whole life,
Pretty
and
much.
you've been to Poulsbo countless times. I truly, Poulsbo is not broken. Poulsbo is far from broken. This isn't one that I come in with an agenda and hair on fire and saying these things have to change. I think Poulsbo is fantastic. That's why I raised my family here. But we have issues around growth and smart growth and parking, and there's a whole bunch of things. And as we continue to grow, I saw a statistic recently that we should double by 2050. The
Whoa.
population of Poulsbo is if we keep growing at the rate we are, it's going to double by 2050. Well, there's got to be decisions made moving forward, and we have to start thinking about those today because 2050, believe it or not, is not as far away as people might think. I remember the 2000 coming. That was 25 years ago. So I'm talking another 25 years. And so we have to start making those decisions and kind of viewing that now. And that's why I really want to kind of have a fresh perspective. We have a fresh new style of government. We have a new city administrator, and so my thought is I'd like to be that fresh face
Hmm.
in Poulsbo as
Yeah.
mayor.
Fresh face, fresh eyes. You have insights that maybe some people don't have. And then having the foresight to look forward 25 years in advance where you might not be in that position in 25 years. You know what
Oh,
I mean?
I wouldn't be mayor in 20.
Yeah,
No, I would
right.
be, I hope I'm alive still. That's the
I hope
goal,
so
but
too.
I'll be, but I'd be living there, and
Yeah,
my grandchildren
right.
who are ages 7 through 2.5. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know. I'm hoping they'll still be living here. And that's right in, right where, the ages that my children are. And so,
absolutely.
I kind of look at it and Ryan, part of it is, and you get to this point when you keep adding years on that I'm thinking about my grandchildren.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
thinking about, they're going to school in Poulsbo and they're going to parks in Poulsbo and they're doing activities in Poulsbo Parks and Rec. I think that there's an opportunity for me to bring my experiences, albeit not all, politically in Poulsbo, but I've had a lot of experiences in life that I think lend themselves to being able to be CEO of Poulsbo.
Yeah, and I mean, really, when you think about it, a mayor is a job. It is a job. It's an occupation at however long it is. And if you go into a position where you have experience to do the job, but you don't know the job entirety, ins and outs, there's going to be some growing pains, like there is in anything. And you just sit, you observe, you try to read it as much as you can. You get all the information over a few months. You get comfortable in the position, and then you're able to make the moves you can do. So that wiggle room of not having the idea of not having enough experience in politics per se, it sounds to me it's like really not that big of a deal. I mean, as long as you have some kind of ethics, you have the ethics, you have the question curiosity, you have the drive to do better, you have people who are in your corner to help with the experience in like the civic manner, at least
Yeah.
to grow the city or to help with that. You can use their insight to help the future of Poulsbo.
Yeah, I'll put it this way, Ryan, because I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody who's coming up that has that experience. It's important. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
it
that
is.
there's important, but I also think that there's bias involved, and it's not a bad bias, but we all
No.
have biases when you're in something for a long time. I certainly have biases in things in my own life, and so coming in with a fresh perspective, asking those questions that maybe haven't been asked in a while,
Right.
right? Because it's being looked at a little bit differently,
Mhm.
and some of the leadership positions and the situations I've had in my career, because the reality is that these skills like understanding rules and regulations and laws, those are teachable.
Yes, they are.
We can learn those. I
Yes.
think the things that are not as teachable are how do you communicate with people?
Hmm.
How do you build relationships? How do you build consensus? How do you try to bring together groups of disparate people
Hmm.
who have different agendas? And I do have a little bit, people will probably remind me of this at some point. I do have a little bit of political background. I was a school board member at North
Oh, there you
Kitsap
go.
for 5 years.
Yeah.
Shout out to all those school board members. That's a tough volunteer position to be
Yeah.
in. I promise you that. And I was president. I will be reminded of this at some point. I was president of the board when we closed a school. I still get reminded of it 10 years later, and I'm sure it'll still come up. It
Sure.
was a decision that had to be made, and it was
Mhm.
difficult, but sometimes you have to make difficult decisions.
Right.
I think the important part is we also need to allow people to vent, to respectfully
Yeah.
share their opinions and to be empathetic. I think one of the areas that we as humans can always improve on, and I'll count myself on that, is being empathetic to people who may suffer at some level
Hmm.
from decisions that are made that may
Yes.
not have helped them in some way, or it might be opposite of what they wanted. That empathy is an incredibly important part of leadership.
Yes.
And that would be something that I hope I would be able to also bring.
Yeah, absolutely. The interpersonal intelligence and able to identify situations that are, what the human problem would be, what
Yeah.
what human issues are going on, and how can we effectively, logically make an appropriate step for good for the people and for the city. Because sometimes it's not always that cut and dry. So,
Oh, I don't. It's never that cut and dry. I'm going to tell you, it almost never is that cut and dry. Sometimes you think it is, but there's an opposing viewpoint,
that's
and
true.
those need to be considered.
Yeah, that's very, very true. So now going forward with as a mayoral candidate and looking at all the experience you have, especially because this is a podcast about books, we'll talk
Yeah.
about your books. What benefits or experience did you gain from writing those books, and how will that help you as the mayor of Poulsbo?
That's a really great question, Ryan. Let me give you some thoughts. I'm going to probably think mostly about here's a little recency bias. I'll probably think the most about back nine walking.
Absolutely.
Here's just a couple bullet points. Number one is time management and prioritization.
Oh man.
You've written a book.
Yes.
You've written multiple books.
Yes, sir.
They're not easy to write.
No, they're not.
They're not. And we've all gone through that journey, and for some it takes longer than others. And it's not always a want to thing. There's a lot of reasons why books take longer.
Mhm.
And so there's a time management and a prioritization that I think I learned through writing books that would help in this position, because even though it's quoted as part-time, there's going to be a lot of time, especially early on, that would be dedicated to the learning curve part of it.
Absolutely.
My book, Back Nine Walking, was really about resilience. That was really the key theme throughout, personal resilience. And writing a book takes resilience, because you're gonna, this, you have ups and downs, and you have, I know I did not actually wrinkle up and throw away any paper like you see in the old movies of somebody. I didn't take it out the typewriter, wrinkle it up, and throw it down. You just hit delete.
Yeah,
But there are many a times that I would have had paper strew, in the waste basket, where you have to be resilient through it. And if you're going to be in a position of leadership in any position, I don't care if it's mayor of a city or any other type of leadership position, you have to be prepared for the bad stuff that happens. There's a point and I don't remember actually which book I wrote this in. Maybe I did in multiple, but I was given some great information or great advice when I became head basketball coach at North Kitsap for girls basketball. And the advice was from a coach who'd been there for many years. I considered a bit of a mentor, Steve Freeze. Steve's retired now, but he told me, he said, look, he goes, every basketball season, is going to have a minimum of three crises. You can be guaranteed. You may only have three, you may have 10, but you're always going to have at least three. He goes, and the season is going, your season will be defined not by how many times you win or lose, but how you were resilient in how you manage those crises.
Yes.
And I kept that with me ever since. That was given to me in 2000. I've kept that 25 years. And so if I'm fortunate enough to become mayor of Poulsbo, I would say, it could be each month or each year.
Yeah,
I've got to prepare to be resilient because crises will happen. It's
absolutely.
just we have to really to a certain level embrace that we've got to be prepared to be resilient.
Hmm.
And so I think that writing that book helped me to become even more resilient than I had been. And I think the other one, if I'll bring up, is just writing books in general, Ryan, communicating to somebody else.
Oh,
When you wrote your
mhm.
when you wrote your books, which I've read and they're fantastic,
Thank
you
you.
had to write to different learning styles, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's
It's
not
true.
just your learning style. For
Mm.
us, it'd be easy to write to somebody who thinks like us.
Oh, simple. Yeah, easy day.
But
No
you you
conflict.
you you have to write in a way, and that's why editors are great, by the way. But
They
you have
really
to
are.
write in a way that works with different people's learning styles and how they take in information.
Hmm.
Well, as mayor of a city, you'd best be prepared to be able to communicate, deliberate, collaborate with various styles of people, how they learn, what their backgrounds are, what their experiences are. We're all different. We all have different worldviews. I'd like to think that everybody in a city has the same outcome,
Right.
that we all want the same type of city. We all have different ways of looking at it and viewing it, and the ability to communicate that to all types of learners. And I use the word learner because to me, it's a learning style, whether you're a visual, whether you're you're an audio. So, if you go to my website, I have video, I have audio, I have reading. I want to be able to have anybody who's coming there be able to take away in that way. And I would like to think that I can do that as mayor as well.
Oh, 100%. And as a author and someone who has put together a project that is just so big, it says a lot about a person if they can work through all the challenges. And a lot of it is just uncharted territory for people. When you go into there, you go, I have no idea what I'm doing. But guess what? I'm gonna figure it out. And that's it. That takes a certain amount of resourcefulness. And you go, well, who do I go to? Well, you start asking questions. And that
Right.
usually leads to more questions, but it leads to answers too. And then you're able to blaze your trail. You get a process, and now you have a way to handle things like crises or when you've written, because you've written 4 or 5 books.
I've written 4 books.
Okay, so by the time the problems that you encounter in book one versus the issues you encountered in book four, you were probably able to handle those a lot faster with a lot less brain power.
Tell you one thing, I'll give you a yes, and I'll give you probably the biggest learning
Hmm.
thing that I got from book one to book four.
Yeah,
And that is you talked about it, getting help.
yeah.
It took me until book four to actually hire and pay for an editor.
Oh my goodness.
At a certain level, at some point, the first one's probably a little more hubris than necessary. Oh, I can write. I know how to write. People like what I say. I'm gonna figure this out. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I did that on book three. I made a mistake. I did do that on book three and then
Gotcha.
on book four. So it took the last two. So it was very helpful in Unleashed Leadership because I did use somebody on that one. And then I used somebody who I knew from before. That's why I was thinking in book four. But
Okay.
to be able to collaborate with them because they on several occasions say, well, you gave the same story in two different chapters. Do you want to pick one? Oh,
Hmm.
I did. Okay.
Yeah.
Or when it was those little things that you take for granted.
Oh yeah.
using pronouns like who is they? Well, they is this. Well, it's not clear. Oh, okay. And so I think books one and two, I enjoyed writing. They're not nearly as good
Mhm.
as books three and four because I had help. And
Yeah.
so to your point, the ability, and I think that there's a great amount of importance, and you really articulated it well. I think there's a great amount of importance and humility in saying, can't be brilliant by myself. Got to ask for help of the right people, people that you trust, people that have the right skill set. You may not always agree with them on things, but you have to be able
Right.
to ask for help, get the help, and use it in areas that you're not as strong in. And
Yeah.
that was probably, if I think about, for those of people listening to this that are writers, there's you can still build a team. You should build a team. You should have somebody who is editing. You should have somebody who is creating graphics or creating the book cover, or doing, maybe, I had somebody with the last book put it all together and load it into Amazon
Right.
for the kind. I didn't do any of
Technical
that. I
skills.
didn't. She did. And so I would say this, on the last one, I had a much larger team.
Hmm.
I had a team of probably four people,
Oh yeah.
whereas in book one, it was just me. And that doesn't work very well. Me does not work as well as we. And I would like to think that is in going into a position like mayor, that again, if I'm fortunate enough to have the city residents say so, then I would like to be able to say it's a team effort. This is a team, leadership is a team sport.
Yes. I mean, it's great to have you hear that too. And it takes a certain amount of reflection to admit that too over time. You go, okay, well, how did this work? How do I make it better? Because if you're a reflective person, you're usually wanting to improve, you're wanting to
Yeah.
grow. When you're in a public service position, that's really what your aim is to grow and help the community continue its growth or to maintain its prosperity. And so having that reflective, did this way of going about this work? Okay, how will I fix this the next time? Always just asking those questions. If whether you change or not depends on how things worked out. But it sounded like that through you have evidence and actually using
Yeah.
your evidence from book one and two. Like, you know what? It might benefit to have an extra pair of eyes look at this because I might have missed something. I'm not perfect. You're good at a lot of things, but no one is good at everything. Hey, all, if you've made it this far on purpose and enjoyed yourself, consider joining the Mighty Books Podcast Patreon. There, you get mighty benefits like early access to new episodes, exclusive members only content, and even free audiobooks. It's a great way to enjoy more insightful interviews, fun conversations, and more mighty stories. Finally, it supports the show so I can continue to deliver top-notch content to you, my mighty listeners. Thanks again for everything, and as always, stay mighty and keep reading.
Yeah, and things like running a city. I don't care how large a city it is, and Poulsbo is a growing city.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're in the Bremerton city limits, but
Mm,
Bremerton is a large city. There's a
yeah.
lot of moving parts, and it really takes everybody together. And I I know politicians, some of them get a bad rap because they deserve it, and in some areas, but I would like to think that the people who are working in cities like Bremerton and Port Orchard and Poulsbo
Yeah.
are doing it because they have a sense of wanting to give,
Yeah.
and the goals are always to move things forward for everybody. And for we're put into a position in any type of leadership role as servant leaders. We've heard
Yes.
that over and over, but the reality is in order to do that, we've got to be humble. We've got to we've got to be candid,
Hmm.
and we've got to be able to communicate all of that at any time. Because if we are not viewed as genuine, you know,
Oh
game,
gosh, yeah.
I think it's game over. We have to be genuine, And I know that seems like it's a common sense, no kidding type of a thing. But it's one of the things I've learned over now 6 decades of life. In the end, you are who you are,
Yeah.
and it gets revealed at some point or another.
Yeah, usually if you're a kind of a, I'll say the word a phony, it doesn't really, people will see through that
Oh
pretty
yeah.
easily. And I've known you forever. I mean, once I was,
See, now you keep saying things that make me really feel old, Ryan.
I can't help it. I'm sorry. It's just how it goes. But I mean, for those at home who haven't heard our first interview, when you guys used to own a little place called the Little Gym
Oh yeah,
years
yeah. I
ago,
learned a lot from the little gym. That was a failure that had good consequences, but I learned a lot from.
oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure you did. I had a great time there. I mean,
Oh, good.
my brother and I went there. We played with your kids, and we had a great time. And but I mean, it's really cool to see now from when where you started. I had no idea you
Thank
owned
you.
the place. It was just a place we went to go to hang out
All
with
right.
family friends. When I was a kid. So it's really neat to see the progression and how you've grown and learned since I was young, and now that you're
Well,
looking
thank
at
you.
being a candidate. It's super. It's just really cool to see that kind of evolution of people as they get older.
Well, thank you. And I want to hit that resilience because you talked about that. I learned a lot. Those are tough learning things, but I think even in writing books,
Oh man.
that from that failure, we only get better from failure. I think it was Kobe Bryant who said, "You're either learning or fail. You're either failing, learning, or you're either succeeding or you're learning. You're
Yeah.
never failing. You're either succeeding or learning." There and that continues on throughout life.
Well, it's funny. That is another point I heard from another author I just had on a few months ago, and he said that he's in finance, and
Okay.
so anytime he had let's say a failure, usually it costs money because
Oh
he's in
yeah.
finance, and so he would write it off as his tuition payment as an expert in his field.
Oh, I like that.
And I love that too. I was like the same thing as writing books or really being an entrepreneur, anything. You do something, you're going to pay for it in some way, whether it be fiscal, emotional, maybe
Right.
physical, hopefully not, but you're going to pay for it in some way. And I don't know about you, I learn best when it hurt a little. It's like, ow, I didn't like doing that. I have to redo a lot of work. I'm going to really
Yeah.
try hard not to have that repeat
Yeah.
again. As an entrepreneur, you have probably endured that many times,
Still
many
do.
times. Yeah, still. Oh yeah, I'm sure you do. Still do. And I'll just say, as going forward, you're talking about being humble and open. When we first got reconnected a couple years ago, I got hooked up to your newsletter. I get that all the time, and it's so fun to read that. And it's very hard to not be candid in a newsletter. So this is something that you've been doing forever. So I
Yeah. Well, you use that forever. Again, feeling a little bit older. I know I'm just
for a
kidding.
long time, is that
For a
better?
long time. Well, and again, I appreciate you saying
Many
that. I
years.
think, life is so much and leadership is so much about your ability to communicate
Hmm.
with different people of different ages, of different genders, of
Oh yeah.
different, world views, of just where people are in life. And where I am is I can look back. I don't have the same experiences as those who are older than me, but I've had parents go through that. But I
Sure.
can look back at people who are younger than me and I can say, I remember having kids at that age. I remember what it was like to do college tuition pay, I remember, these struggles. And I think that adds to the ability to empathize with where people are in different places and try really to do the best. You can't make everybody happy. We
No.
all know that. But the reality is, if you're trying to do the best for everybody involved, there will be some of that, but you can still do your best to communicate it.
Intention is really key. I found if you intend to do good, you'll do your best to do good. It doesn't always happen, but you intend to do the best you can. And it's intention is really key. That's what people I think really feel for. If you're intending to grow, intending to do your best,
Yeah.
put your best foot forward. And then it's the hardest part on putting yourself out there like you have and are is dealing with the criticism. And not
Yeah.
just it's not just like, okay, that's critical, but also taking it home with you and not letting it resonate so much that it causes you to to pull back from decisions, but it's helpful enough that you use it as a tool to reflect on to hopefully make better decisions in the future.
Yeah, and social media has and continues to
Oh, yeah.
change dramatically. I mean, it's substantially different than it was even, 10 years ago, 12 years ago when I was on the school board. It's changed dramatically to this day. And I think you had talked about challenges, and I didn't think about that until you just brought this up, Ryan. I think one of the challenges is, you can deal with critiques regarding decision. There's a lot of things. There are social media critiques though that can be really just brutally mean. And
Hmm.
I think one of the things that I will have to do as part of this, because I still am going to keep track of it. It's not like you can't ignore it,
No.
but I think what you have to do is make sure that you understand, where is that person coming from, and do I need to
Mm.
actually, is it worthwhile for me to even read anymore?
Yeah.
Or let it go. And I think there has to be a certain level of, this is legitimate concern and this is just being mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you have to find a way to let that go. And actually the more bigger concern I have is for the family,
Hmm.
because I have people who love me
Hmm.
who will read those things. And so I got their okay first before I did this. I said, "Hey, look," and they knew, hey, Ryan, let me tell you,
Yeah.
being the head basketball coach on a high school basketball team gets you critique. It might be as,
Oh.
people say, "Oh, hey, I've been a basketball coach. I got critique yelled behind me, in the moment." So I get that.
Hmm.
Social media changes all that. And I just need to make sure that my wife Barb and my daughters and the grandkids are a little bit young for that, but that everybody was on board.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I'm assuming are they pretty excited for for
They
your
are. They
candidacy? Yeah.
are. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they've known me long enough. They say, okay, here's another one. Here's a new thing. And Barb was pretty much, she goes, look, you're gonna do what you really want to do. I'm here to support you. And that was great.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you really want to do this, you know, uh, I know you well enough for 40 years, you're going to do it.
Hmm.
And it wasn't a negative way. And it was very much, but if you want it, let's go do it. And she's on board. And like I said, I got family here. And I want to make sure they were okay with that because, look, something like this, no matter what, brings in family
Hmm.
into the equation. And I'm trying as I get older to be more cognizant of collateral damage around me. It is what it is. Because again, it's not just me. I want to be cognizant of the people around me, and so they're in for it. We're all on the same team.
Yeah, and I mean that kind of speaks volumes in and of itself is you're getting the family's blessing to go forward because I mean everything has a consequence. I'm saying it could be a good consequence or a bad consequence depending on the decision. So it's really great to see that reflectiveness, that holistic looking at I think you said 30,000 foot kind of
Yeah.
overview of how does this decision not just affect me, but affects the ones I care about and then beyond. So I mean, having someone like that perspective or mindset is really good in a leadership position, especially one as mayor of
Well, and I've used that throughout
Poulsbo.
my life. I mean, Barb sees things differently than me as well
Right.
too. And just from an advisory, I mean, she's very good at pointing out how somebody else might feel. She's helped me to be more empathetic because that's her strong suit. She
Hmm.
probably doesn't want me even talking about that because, oh, this is your thing. But that's her strong suit. That's what I've learned a great deal of thinking, oh, there's other people. It's not just not me.
Yeah.
And so to be able to get counsel like that at times has been invaluable for me.
Hmm. That's actually, yeah, a team. It's a team. Everything we
Yeah.
do in this life is a team effort. It doesn't. You might be the most lone person ever, but at the end of the day, it takes a team. It takes a
Absolutely.
village to do this. Now, I want to kind of veer over to
Sure.
golf for a little bit because I know golf is
Yeah.
a big is a big aspect of your life, and it
It
was
is.
a theme of back nine walking. So,
Yeah.
so how
Yeah.
it is? So you've coached golf, you've played golf.
Well, I just as we record this, I don't know when it comes out, but as we record this, I literally just got back from my annual golf trip to Bandon Dunes.
Oh,
I went
very
with my
cool.
son-in-law, my brother-in-law, and one of my longtime friends, and just got back from that trip. I coach high school golf. I'm about to enter my fourth year,
Wow.
and so this doesn't stop me in any way. I'm going forward and I'll be coaching golf. I also have a little kind of a side business where I do some instruction for people
Cool.
with golf around golf fitness. That's a lot of fun that I do with my friend Brett Clark from BC Fitness. And so it's a main part of my life. And in the book, Back Nine Walking, we talk a lot about things like, well, in golf, you hit the ball, and then whether you got a good bounce, a bad bounce, or whatever, you have to play the next shot. I think we talked about that at
Oh,
the,
yes.
you might moan and groan a little bit about it, but at some point within the next couple of seconds, you're going to have to hit the ball where it lies.
Mhm.
That's the game, and that's life. And
Yes.
so, that would be the same here. So golf is an important part. It was a part of my book, but I think it's really become, as from me as a life standpoint, it's helped guide me in how I reflect upon life, because really there's so many similarities to the journey on a golf course, that each holds its own entity, and I think each period in our life is its own entity, and how we respond to the good breaks, the bad breaks. And
Yeah.
one of the things, I'll just share this because you got me, I didn't even know you were going to ask this question, but it got me thinking. I've tried to set goals now on things that I can control. I used to play and do things like, I want to set these goals. Well, a lot of them had nothing to do with what I could control, but I can control what kind of a playing partner I am.
Mm,
So for me is I'm happy regardless of what that score says, that if somebody walks away and says, I really enjoyed playing with Dan today. That was fun. I'd like to do that again. That's something I can control. So
mhm.
those types of things are trying to move me forward. And if again, if I'm mayor, I'd like to keep that in mind, is I can't control everything. So I'm going to focus on what I can control and how I respond to those.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's perfect. Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to be leading to anyway. So you hit the the nail on the head right there. And it sounds like, I mean, everything you do, you lead with it's a passion project. It's a game of passion. You have messages you want to put out there. It's all about what drives you forward. And even through the hardships, the challenges, you still seem to rise up, improve, and keep going, and with the best attitude you can possible.
Well, I'm going to say this. If I can at least, I'm sure we're getting to a point where we're going to start wrapping up. So I want to make sure I say this. I led with this. You asked me, I said it sounded like fun. I think I said somewhere along the line, I've gotten to a stage, and sometime I wish I probably would have done it earlier, that I'm not going to do something if I don't think it's going to be fun.
Perfect.
I
Perfect.
mean, life's too short. The walk
Agree.
is too short. The round is too short. We don't know when it's going to end.
Yeah.
And so I've seen enough now to know that I am not going to move forward doing something if I don't think it's going to be fun. Because, why do it then? You're not going to have the
Right.
passion. You're not going to have the conviction. I'm committed to this. And really, I'll say this, and I don't think I've even said this out loud yet. This process of running is fun.
Mhm.
I may not get elected. I completely understand that.
Yeah.
But this is gonna be fun. It's not necessarily in the end. I'm committed to doing this. My intention is winning. I certainly want to do that. I'm competitive, but I'm gonna have fun no matter what.
Mhm.
This year, 2025, of all of this, and this is part of it, is doing podcasts like this. I'm gonna have fun, because otherwise it'll be obvious, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It's like, what's the point at this point? So
Right.
having fun, enjoying life, and then just exploring. This is a part of, like I said, uncharted waters in some way. This is something new and fresh to do, and share your own
Yep.
experiences, share all the cool things that you want to hopefully improve upon or learn. And you can leave behind a legacy with your family, and whether it be a win or a loss, it's still something you got to experience. You would never have known if you didn't try. So this
And what I'll
is
say is it's going to be a win no matter what. And I'm really, and I, that,
great way of putting it.
I'm not just saying that. I truly, Ryan, you know me, I really, I have to feel that way. Otherwise, if it's so binary, win or lose, then, then there's bitterness, and that's not going to happen. This is a win no matter what,
Right.
because I will have learned something. I will have improved one way or another by the time this is done. And maybe somebody else will have too. Other people will have by the end of this as well. And that's what my goal is.
Excellent. That's a wonderful way of approaching pretty much everything in life, I think. So you're on the right path. I think this is super exciting. When I saw that notice on online, I think over a month or so ago, I was like,
Yeah.
go get him. Like, go get him. This is cool. This is
Thank
so
you.
cool. Yeah, it's so cool. So I'm excited for you. I do hope you win. I mean, I'm a little biased because I've
Well,
known you
thank you.
for a
I'll
while.
take that emotional support. I'll take that.
You're welcome. My pleasure. But I'm sure people want to know, A, where they can connect with you to ask you maybe some questions about
Yep.
the race, and maybe even get a contact to get some books from you. So how can they get a
Yeah.
hold of you?
So I'll start with the book. It's still pretty easy. Back9walking.com, and it's a number nine, not spelled out. If you'd like to get the book, it's still only been a couple of years. I think it's 3 years old.
Yeah,
Captain Jack has since left us, but his legacy and his advice still lives on in there. So back9walking.com or danweedin.com. If you want to go to, if you're, especially if you're in the Poulsbo area and you want to check that out, Weedin4Poulsbo.com. The number four, however, I also bought FOR. So, or FOUR, whichever, or FOR. See, now I
FOR,
got
yeah.
that all messed up. But
You're good.
Weedin, the number four, Poulsbo.com is my website. It's got all the campaign information, and there are ways to follow me on Facebook and Instagram and all of that. And you can reach out to me there.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on again. This is so cool to reconnect, and I'm in the back here cheering for you. So I'm
Well,
looking.
and by the way, I get all of your newsletters, and I listen to. I don't know if I want to listen to every one, but I listen to several of your podcasts, and you're
Awesome.
doing a great job. Keep up the great work.
Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. And again, I'm looking for when is the race? When does the race end? When
The
is it
November
coming?
election. It's a
Okay,
November
okay,
election, so we're as we record this, still very very early in the process. We don't even know everybody who's going to be running yet, so it's a November election.
okay, okay, fabulous. And later on, if you want to connect again, chit chat, we get closer, I will be happy to host you one more time or
Well, you won't have to
one
ask me
another
twice.
time.
You won't have to ask me twice to ask. I'll be back on anytime.
You have my number. Hit me up
Yes,
and
sir.
we'll happily connect again. So I really appreciate you coming on here. This has been fantastic.
Well,
So
thank you. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
yes, yes. All right, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this conversation. Go check out Dan Weedin's books. Go check out, see if you want to contact him for any questions you may have if you're in the Poulsbo area. Maybe you just want to pick his brain because he is a very experienced individual, entrepreneur, and just honestly a all around nice guy. So it'd be really like just chit chat and talk with him. All right, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And as always, stay mighty and keep reading.